right now. And I've been talking about attachment styles previously, and codependency in relationships is also related to that. And this is a topic that is also very close to my heart because I have struggled with this myself and I'm still healing. I would say I'm still on the journey of healing with this condition, or I would say, yeah, it's a condition. And so, codependency in relationships is our topic for today. So, let's move forward. And I have a small little case study over here. I would say it's a hypothetical sort of scenario to help you all understand and begin. So let's say meet Miss X, and she's a stay-at-home mom of two children. She's been married for over 10 years, and recently everything seemed to be going fine. But lately, Miss X feels like she isn't doing anything for herself, and she feels as if all her life she has been living for others instead of doing something that she wanted to do. And she also says that if her husband is worried about something at work, it feels as if her whole day is spent thinking about how upset her husband might be. So, what you just saw here was a classic, or I would say somehow a example of codependency in a person. And these are just few of the signs, or let's say symptoms of codependency in a person. And now I know a lot of you might be able to relate to what she is going through, and a lot of you might have felt this way at some point in your life, or you continue to feel this way. But what's upsetting here, or the problem here, is when this condition, these signs, tend to start dominating your everyday life, and when they start to dominate your everyday thought process. So, here we're going to talk about what codependency actually is. And codependency is a dysfunctional pattern of neglect of self in order to gain the approval, in order to gain validation, and seek love from other people or a partner. So, over here, I know this seems very normal because in our day-to-day lives, we do tend to ask for the approval of other people. We tend to gain validation. We tend to seek love from other people. But what the problem here or is chronic self-neglect. There is a repeated pattern of neglect in ourselves. And the problem here is when we do these things, but all the while we tend to forget ourselves. We tend to neglect our own needs, our own validation, and the love that we give to ourselves. So here the focus is oriented towards other people instead of on the person, on themselves, right? So I hope that's clear, and we're moving on. So, like every problem, like every condition that we deal with in this field, we're going to go back to its root cause. We're going to find out what actually happened. And with every with the scenario that we just studied, we're going to also go back to the role of the family dynamics, where person who is experiencing codependency, so what sort of environment they grew up in, what sort of household they used to be in, their family environment and their dynamics, like I just said. So if you grew up in a household where I don't mean to offend anyone. This is just a very common example of how the situation arises, or its root cause, or we can say the dynamics of this condition. So, if you grew up in a household where there was a lack of the concept of boundaries, so I know a lot of us repeatedly talk about boundaries, and this phenomena has become very common nowadays. That boundaries are really important in relationships, in your everyday lives. So, when we talk about boundaries, so let's say that one member of your family is upset. So naturally, you are going to be upset as well. All of the members of the family are going to be upset. They're going to be concerned about that person. But let's take the example of the emotion anger. And let's say the father, the primary caregiver, or the father is angry and he comes home and he has a bad day at work, and all of that anger is being taken out on the members of the family. So it's very common. This stuff happens. But what we don't know is that not everyone has that emotional bandwidth, that mental capacity to with to stand those emotions as well. So let's say a child at the age of 6 years old, he is not going to be able to understand why his dad is angry, why is everyone else angry, or why is everyone else made to feel that emotion as well. So where everyone at this point is going to be really confused. I mean, Are they responsible for their dad's anger? So this is where we're seeing a lack of boundaries because everyone else is made aware of that emotion. They're made to acknowledge that emotion even if they did not want to. So a child who's busy on his computer or is busy playing games, he also has to acknowledge that emotion, and even if he does not want to. So this is where we're seeing that there's a lack of boundaries. And moving on, and if you grew up in a household where one or more member of the family was too controlling, so over here, to some extent, this is all right, it's fine. But when this manifests itself into something like a member of the family who is too controlling, and you are made to feel like you can't live without that person, you need that person's approval every day. You feel like you can't live without that person if they don't guide you, if they aren't there to help you decide what to do. So somehow you are relying reliant on that person in your everyday life, in your everyday decision making, and that person somehow tends to influence whatever you do, whether you like it or not. And so as you grow up, you become reliant on other people as well, because that independence, that boundary where you tend to influence your own decision making, where you decide what you want to do, that is lacking. There's that boundary is not there. And next point we have here is, if you grew up in a household where it was hard to discuss something that upset you without having other people in the family worried or judging you. So this over here, we talk about the feeling that you're actually afraid of how other people will react or respond to you. So even if it's something a minor inconvenience, let's say, so that something will worry you because you are afraid of what they're going to say, how they're going to react to what you're trying to tell them. So you tend to bottle up those emotions inside you because you feel like, you know what, it's pointless. I mean, they are not going to get it. Or you know how we're sometimes we're afraid of telling something to our parents because we're afraid that they're going to judge us or be upset, and that's normal. But what's the problem here is that when you tend to bottle up those emotions inside yourself instead of actually speaking up about it without having to worry that you'll be judged or your emotions won't be acknowledged the way that you wanted them to be acknowledged. And okay, I think we have a question here. Oh, I lost it. I'll get back to you. Hold on. So, and the last point over here is that if you grew up in a household where you were made to feel responsible for your family members' suffering, so like I just talked about previously about the example of anger. So over here, we talk about made to feel responsible. So over here, if your dad was angry or the father was angry, somehow you started to feel like you did something wrong. Maybe are they angry because of something that I did? Did I do something wrong? So this thought process tends to dominate your everyday life and everyday situation that is related to this. So if one member of the family is upset or worried, you tend to start questioning yourself. Did I do something wrong? Did I make them feel that way? Instead of actually addressing the problem that is happening over there. So this was sort of the dynamics of the families that are happening. And now when we move on, we talk about what happened when you grew up in such a household. So if anyone has any question, I think you type it in the chat. I can't seem to get a hold of it right now. You can maybe you can unmute yourself and ask me or talk about it, because we're going to discuss these things. So if you have any questions, just feel free to ask me.
Um, it's just, I don't know, it's a little question. I just want to know, like whatever you just said, does it come under that scenario? Log kya kahenge? We are very does it come under codependency? Like, a person is not only codependent within their family member,
Family.
or like on a society as a whole. Like, we are very, very concerned about, like,
So when you emerge into your adulthood, this is where you tend to think about what other people are going to think of you. So all of this now is coming into your adulthood as well. And now you're confused what other people are going to react, or how they are going to react to what you feel or what you say. So yes, to answer your question, that is what we're going to talk about here, that we tend to, our focus tends to be directed towards what other people think of us, what they're going to say. So what happened when you grew up in such a household? So the person tends to become a victim of enmeshment. So enmeshment is a term that we give to when someone attaches too strongly to one or more people in order to be close to them, to the point that they have no interests of their own. So over here, it's not necessary that it's going to be one person. It can be other people or many people. So the problem here again is the fact that you are neglecting yourself, your own interests, in order to be close to other people. So in enmeshment, when we move forward, we're going to look at what codependency looks like in enmeshment in this phenomena. So the first point is emotional addiction. An emotional addiction is when you rely on the emotional experiences you're used to. And an example of this is women who are subjected to domestic violence. And it's a very sensitive topic over here, but again, it's very important that I do talk about this. So, when you talk about emotional addiction, it's basically when you become reliant on certain emotions that you are used to feeling for the most part of your life. So, if we talk about fear, and women who are subjected to domestic violence, who experience domestic violence, they tend to be afraid of their husbands or their partner, and that fear, that anxiety has become so normalized, has become such a common or immediate response to even the most minor inconvenience. So, the most minor inconvenience is going to cause that woman, that person, to feel really anxious, and that anxiousness, that anxiety has become an automated response to anything. So, this is where that person becomes really addicted to feeling that emotion, and this addiction means that you're neglecting everything else around you, you're neglecting every other emotion. You are too reliant on that emotion. You're so used to feeling anxious, you're so used to feeling worried, that you don't really have time to focus on anything else around you. And I would also like to give this phenomenon the name of when we say walking on eggshells around a person. So there is a constant fear of upsetting your partner. You have high emotional reactivity, so you're constantly on high alert about what's going to happen if you mess up, what your partner is going to say, how they are going to react if you mess up. And if we talk about if we come out from the one-on-one relationship, if we talk about other people, so again, it's the chronic fear of upsetting other people. When you become so reliant on that emotion of anxiety, on that emotion of fear, because you've been used to feeling that way, you've been enmeshed, you have been attaching yourself so strongly to other people that you've neglected your own emotions, other emotions as well. So now you have this constant fear of upsetting other people, and you're not focusing on yourself. Again, you're not aware of your own emotions, your own what's actually happening with you. And number three, we have self-image. So self-image, I've left a question mark over here because we're going to do a little activity with self-image when we talk about self-image. So I hope everyone is here and ready. I want you all to raise your hand and think of three things that are good about you. Think of any three qualities about yourself that you think are good. And on your other hand, think of three qualities that are maybe not so great. So, and I'm going to need a volunteer for this. So if anyone who is done thinking about those three things can just unmute themselves and volunteer for this. I'm going to give you a few minutes, 1 minute or 2 minutes, I think. That's going to be enough for this. Three qualities that are good about yourself and three qualities that are maybe not so great. Dependency are going to think that they're loyal just because they're a good wife, just because they're a good friend, or just because they're a good mother. That's it. That's where we draw the line. So now over here, we see that quality in itself is not really about themselves now, is it? It's more about how other people perceive themselves. Now over here, not you, a
Yeah, yeah, no,
person
no.
who may have struggled with codependency is going to question their self-image. This is where we are going to question their self-worth and self-image. Now,
Mhm.
people who struggle with codependency, their worth comes from how people perceive them, how other people approve of them, of their choices, of their perspective, rather than thinking that their worth isn't defined by others. So people who are struggle with codependency think that their worth is associated with how other people think of them, how worthy they are in the eyes of other people. how good of a wife she is in front for her husband, how good of a mother she is for her child, or how good of a friend she is for her child, rather than the quality of, that's where she will draw the line. She won't move forward and maybe think about how strong she is. When we talk about the quality of being strong. So if I say I'm strong because I recognize that I am strong. I'm not strong because I helped someone else or I helped a friend go through something. I'm strong because I recognize that in myself. So that's where I oriented all of that perception of myself towards me. That's where I recognized my own self-worth and my self-image. But someone who struggles with codependency is even is going to look at the quality of being strong as something that is related to someone else. So for example, if I say that I'm kind, so I'm kind because I help other people, I'm kind because I'm good to my co-workers, but then again, that's because you're good to your co-workers and that's how they perceive you. That's how they perceive you. You're kind because that's how they perceive you. But you can be kind just because you think that you are kind. That's just
Oh,
because
this is
you
something
recognize.
new. Aisha, this is something new I've learned today. Great. Thank you. This is
Exactly.
wow.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So yeah, this is where we have to put that, bring that locus of control towards ourselves. And you have to recognize that you're strong because you recognize that yourself. No one else told you that you're strong, right? So, but like I said, people with codependency tend to struggle with thinking about themselves, finding out what's good about themselves. And if we talk about the bad qualities, I'm not going to ask you that. That was just a part of the activity. But if we talk about the bad qualities, even those qualities are normally oriented towards other people, what other people think of them. So if you talk about being a good mom, or if she says that I'm a bad mom because other people think that I'm a bad mom, I haven't lived up to those expectations of other people. But if you think that you're a bad mom because you were having a bad day, that's on you. That's all on you. That's what you think. You did not let anyone else affect that perception of you. That's still okay. But if you think that you're a bad mom because you did not meet the expectations of other people, of the society, of your family, then that's where the problem is. That's a red alert. That's a red flag that you need to be aware of. And then you have to focus on your self image and try to recognize what you think makes your self image, what factors, what qualities you recognize in yourself rather than what other people recognize in you. So, yeah, if we talk about codependency over here, so there is a lack of self esteem automatically when you don't have a good self image, when you don't have the concept of your self worth. So I hope that was a new concept, like Amna said for her. And I hope this was something that you learned. And moving on. So when I talked about enmeshment over here, that when we grew up, we became a victim of enmeshment. So like enmeshment, we have another phenomena over here. So when you grew up, you also might become, the person might become a victim of self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice is when you excessively try to fulfill the needs of others at the cost of your own happiness. So over here, again, you are so busy, you are oriented towards fulfilling the needs of other people that you forget what you want. You are unable, when you grow up, as a child, you saw your parents being worried about other people, fulfilling the needs of other people. You saw maybe a member of your family or in general, just a society around you that is always oriented towards fulfilling the needs of others, how other people come first. But you forgot about yourself through in that process. And when you grew up, again, you became so indulged in that process of fulfilling the needs of other people that you forgot yourself. You forgot how to communicate your own needs. The word communicate over here, I'm going to lay emphasis on that because, sure, even if you are aware of your needs, but the fact that you have to communicate those needs, that's another step, that's another process. Being aware and being able to communicate are completely different things, even if you are aware of your needs. But when it comes to expressing, when it comes to communicating those needs, you fail because you haven't been used to that. You haven't been told, you haven't been able to recognize that it's okay to put your needs first. Sometimes it's okay if, sure, you may do things for other people, but it's okay if you do things for yourself as well. But people who are struggling with codependency, they find it really hard to communicate their own needs because of that self neglect, because of that chronic self-neglect that they forget themselves and their needs and how to communicate those needs in front of other people. So with self-sacrifice, in codependency, there's a lot of people pleasing. So I know that we're all aware of people who have this, who display this behavior of people pleasing, and sometimes we do get annoyed by such people. But what we need to know is that people pleasing comes from when you try to overcompensate for your shortcoming. So people pleasing has the whole background behind this is trying to self-aggrandize. I'm pretty sure not many of you would be aware of this term. So self-aggrandize basically means when you exaggerate your importance or when you exaggerate your influence on other people. So like I said, people pleasing, such people tend to overly fulfill or please other people, their needs. They tend to constantly try to please other people to the point that they also want to exaggerate their influence. They want to exaggerate the fact that they are helping other people, that they are looking after other people. They're but the fact that they are trying to overcompensate, this is a problem because overcompensation is never okay. Even if you did something wrong, you made a mistake, you're not supposed to overcompensate for that. You're just supposed to accept that mistake, recognize, accept that emotion in itself, recognize that situation instead of trying to make up for it. So yeah, self-sacrifice and people pleasing is a very common phenomenon in codependency. And this people pleasing, this trying to fulfill other people's needs, can also manifest into excessive caretaking behavior to the point that there is excessive self-neglect. You neglect yourself and you are indulging in excessive caretaking behavior. And I've seen this very common in women, older women who are really busy taking care of their husband, their children, even their in-laws, to the point that they think that they're doing something really good. Yes, you are taking care of other people. That's a very good quality. That's a very good thing. But when you neglect yourself, when you neglect your own needs, that is not okay. That is nowhere I would ever say that that is okay, because when you take care of other people, there's always a boundary. There's always a limit to how much you can do for a person. And again, point number 3 says lack of boundaries. So over here, lack of boundaries is when you don't is the failure is actually failure to recognize your own boundaries and other people's boundaries. So you are basically crossing other people's boundaries even if you're trying to help them. Maybe did not even ask for your help, but because of that excessive people pleasing, codependency, thinking about other people, constantly thinking about the needs of other people, their likes and dislikes, you tend to engage in this excessive caretaking behavior and cross the boundaries of other people.
I like to add something here. The cause, and you need to see basically why the person wants to help the other person. If it's coming from a place of insecurity and fear of abandonment, then that's codependency. Because when you have that fear in you, that is why you people please. That is why you take care of other people, because you don't want to be left by them. You want to please them. So it comes from a place of fear and insecurity. But when you're helping someone for, maybe if you're being charitable, or if you're a philanthropist, that is coming from a place of love. That is coming from a place of wanting to help people, because as Ayesha said, is a passion and you love doing that. And there's no insecurity in that. It just makes you feel good. So you have to see the cause. And that is also, when you are helping someone else, you also should see inside and self-reflect. Why do you think you're doing this? That's all.
Perfect. Thank you. It clarifies a lot. Now I know myself.
Perfectly put.
Learn something new. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Right. So just coming to that, yeah. So when we talk about moving forward, so where does all of this leave you? So Sanam, I will come to your question. Just I'm going to come to that. So a maladaptive coping mode where the person neglects their needs, their emotions. So like Eamon said, where is all of this coming from? It's coming from a maladaptive coping mode where you're neglecting your own needs, your own emotions. And all of this has been going on ever since. So you have that insecurity, you have that fear of abandonment because your needs were not met in your childhood. You were too focused on other people, and even now you're too focused on other people. and you have been neglecting yourself. So there's that insecurity, there's that neglect, there's that fear that other people will leave you if you don't do those things for them, if you don't look after them, if you don't look after their needs. So that is a fear in itself, and that has become a coping mode for you, where you neglect your own needs and your own emotions because you want to help other people. So again, this isn't okay. And it may also result in a phase or a mode where the person acts like a child and they feel betrayed, and they often burst out in anger, because when you are chronically, constantly neglecting yourself, you, at one point you're going to burst, you're going to realize something is wrong. And then that person tends to wish or hope that someone else is going to save them, because from that childhood, that neglect, those the fear what other people will think of you, how they might leave you, all of that is now manifested into your adulthood, but you're still a child, and you're still wishing or hoping someone is going to come and save you, and someone else is going to do that for you, and that is not how it goes. So coming on to healing in codependency. So I've taken this excerpt from a very renowned psychologist, and she's Dr. Nicole Lapere, and she's a holistic psychologist. She works in this area, and she says that when you talk about practicing setting and holding boundaries, so like Sanam said, it's really hard to do that. Sometimes you can't just as a wife, as a mother, you can't just tell your kids like, you know what, leave me alone, I need some me time right now. That's not going to be okay. So when we talk about boundaries, it's a gradual process, and something as little as taking some time alone, 5 minutes of your day, to just watch a video on YouTube, and that video should not be Baby Shark. So it's going to be something that you want to do for yourself. So you have to start small. Again, start letting your kids know that sometimes I'm watching a video, and that video is what I want to watch, right? Kids have their own screen time, they have their own activities, and sometimes mommy needs to do some things too. So it's really hard when you just jump into this process of setting and holding boundaries. Again, it's very sensitive, and so it starts gradually. And with children, we know that, again, if you're going to set boundaries because you feel that that all of that insecurity, that fear of having been doing all of these things for other people, and then again you're afraid that if you set boundaries with your children, then it's going to be a problem, they're not going to understand. So if you just come from a place of love and you try to understand that you're a human and you need to have your own boundaries regardless of the fact that you have children, and it's really hard to children know that you're doing this because, how should I put it, you need some time to yourself, not because they're disturbing you or it's been a long day, it's been a bad day. Just let them know that it's okay to have boundaries. If you have your own boundaries, your children will automatically also know, recognize that concept as well. We have, hold on. Hope I'm audible. Right.
Yes, Ayesha, you are. And there are a few
Okay.
questions if you want to open the chat box.
Sure, hold on. Yeah, so we have a question. It's not a question, actually, it's something just adding to what I just said. So Subhana says that people will try to make you feel guilty about your boundaries because they don't know how to set their own. Yes, that does tend to happen. And like I said, this is something that people who struggle with codependency have been dealing with, have experiences in their lives. So setting boundaries becomes really hard because other people will not always understand that concept in itself, or the fact that you just need some time alone. So this is where the fact, can I also talk about assertiveness over here? So, like I said, people who struggle with codependency find it really hard to say no. And it's even harder when you have to say no to your own children. So again, this is where assertiveness also comes in. With setting boundaries also comes assertiveness. So there's a point where you do have to say no, and you can choose to say that no. You can choose to be assertive, but you can choose to be assertive in a really polite way, letting people know that it's okay to have boundaries and it's okay to have some time to yourself. So kindness goes a long way, like I said, being It goes a long way.
Thank you.
And for you, and understanding your attachment style and the attachment style of your partner, very important. Again, previously I have talked about attachment styles and in relationships. So like I said, codependency is a part of that. It's coming from attachment. And when we see that people, if you remember about anxious attachment style, so people who have an anxious attachment style do tend to become victims of codependency as well. This is where they have that fear, that insecurity that their partner or other people are going to leave them. So just the fact that you recognize your attachment style and you're aware of your insecurity, where you're coming from, like Eamon said, when we need to question ourselves, we need to question why we're doing this for someone else, why we're doing a certain thing for other people. So is that coming from a place of insecurity? Is that coming from a place of fear that someone will leave you? Then doing that thing is not going to benefit you. There's no point if that thing is doing that thing is coming from a place of insecurity. But if you're doing something for someone else because that's your passion, that's what you wanted to do, you really wanted to help that person regardless of the fact that you neglect yourself or you don't neglect yourself, but you're doing that thing because it's not coming from a place of insecurity, or you're not afraid of that person, you just really want to help that person. So that's okay. But like we have questions. Hold on, I'll just come on to that. And practicing clearly communicating your needs, but also holding space for the needs of your partner. So if you're talking about, putting your needs first, that is not always the case when you are in a relationship. Of course, there's another person over there. So sure, you put forward your own needs, but don't forget about the other person. When you communicate your needs, it's a two-way process. So holding space for the needs of your own partner is where a mutual understanding is established. So when you are going to express yourself, when you are going to be okay with expressing yourself, automatically the other person is going to be able to express themselves as well. And that's only when there's going to be a mutual understanding. So always leave space for the other person to understand you, not only understand you, but also be able to communicate what they feel about it. So give your partner that space to understand you and communicate their own needs as well. So it goes both ways. It's not a one-sided relationship, because in codependency, there's just one person who is constantly fulfilling the needs of other people, and that person is just taking. So you can only fill a cup. Every cup has its capacity. If you're going to overfill it, you're not going to get anything out of it. It's only going to be a lot that you're giving, and that you're not receiving anything in return. Um, Next, we have practicing healing. Same thing. I have a little comparison over here about codependency and focusing on yourself. Um, Before I talk about this, Amna, can you see what questions do we have? That's okay.
It's more of a feedback, what we just talked about.
All right. Okay. So yeah, if we look at healing in codependency, when you're not expressing your needs and you're meeting other people's needs, whereas if you focus on yourself, that means that you are expressing yourself, expressing myself and my needs, even if it means that they won't always understand. So the fact that you are expressing yourself, the fact that you are expressing or putting forward your needs, your expectations, does not mean that the other person is always going to understand it, but the fact that you expressed it is a big step. It's actually something that you should praise yourself for. That today I was able to tell my partner what I wanted without being afraid of how they're going to feel about it, of how they're going to judge me, or even of the fact that they won't understand me. The fact that you expressed yourself is on itself a very good, it's a reward in itself. And the fact that in codependency, you feel like your partner should be someone who is going to fix you or save you, or you should have a partner who is going to fix you, or he's going to be someone or she's going to be someone who's going to save me. That's not the case. My partner and I have mutual understanding and we support each other. So if I am putting forward my needs, if I am expressing my needs, my partner also has that space to express their needs and what they want and their point of view. And then we both come on to a mutual understanding. So it's never a one-way thing. Just remember that it's not a one-sided relationship. It's always going to be, we both have to put in efforts to understand each other, to understand each other's needs. And that does not mean that Some needs will be met, some needs will not be met, but that's okay as long as you're expressing yourself and you have that ability, you took that initiative to express yourself. I will end this topic over here, our session over here. So I have a little quote over here, and it says that I am the hero of my own life. No one is going to come and save me. I am responsible for how I perceive my emotions, for how I hold my opinions, and I am responsible for my own shortcomings. And if other people are upset with me, I can try to change that, but there's always a limit to how much I can do as a person. I have my limits. So I know where I stand, and I know that some things will not always go as I planned, but you're not supposed to be afraid of it. So take initiative, try your best to rely on your own opinions, your own self worth, and always focus on not people pleasing, I would say, but yes, helping other people, acknowledging other people, their opinions, their emotions, but at the same time, don't forget yourself. Always remember that you are your own person. And thank you so much. And if you have any questions, you can please go ahead and ask.